My ex-wife wants more child support, more money from me to fund the life she's building for herself. But here's the thing, our kids, they're only with her on weekends. Now, I'm fighting for full custody because I can't stand by and watch this happen. Hey, everyone! I did something recently, and I'm torn. Was it the right move? The wrong one? I don't know anymore. But what's really messing with me is that everyone, literally everyone, is upset about it. Even my own parents. And that's why I'm here. I need clarity. This is about me and my ex-wife. Let's call her Tara. We're both 30. We have two incredible kids together, a 7-year-old son and a 5-year-old daughter. But for the past 2 years, we've been living separate lives. She has partial custody, but only on the weekends, her choice, not mine. Tara and I got married when we were 22, fresh out of college, full of dreams. Back then, life was simple. We were in love. Or at least, we thought we were. But over time, the routine, the same old days, the same old fights, it wore us down. We weren't the same people we used to be. And after our daughter was born, everything unraveled. We fought constantly. About everything. Big things, little things, things that shouldn't have even mattered. It wasn't just tough on us, it was tough on the kids. We kept trying, pushing, pretending for their sake. But it wasn't working. It was ugly. Painful. I suggested therapy, one last effort to fix what was broken. But she shot it down. Said she'd rather cut ties than drag it out. And you know what? I respected that. So we ended it. I run my own catering business. Tara, on the other hand, is a high school teacher. I make significantly more than her, so naturally, the court ruled in her favor. She got alimony. She got child support. Even though the kids only stayed with her on weekends, her lawyer managed to lock in a solid deal. There was no backing out of it. It's been 2 years since the divorce, and honestly, things have been smoother. We're better as co-parents than we ever were as partners. The divorce itself wasn't a war, but let's be real, it wasn't pleasant either. Still, we made it work for the kids. We didn't talk unless it was about them. The only time we saw each other was during drop-offs and pickups. And that was fine. For the holidays, we put on a united front, just for them. But that was the extent of it. I thought everything was stable. The kids were happy. Life had finally settled. Then, 2 weeks ago, Tara threw a curveball. She called me, on a weekday, out of nowhere. Unusual. She said we needed to talk. In person. I had no clue what was coming. We met for lunch. And that's when she hit me with it. She wanted to renegotiate child support. She wanted more money. Her reasoning? She was planning to quit her job. Said she wanted to join a startup with a friend, finally put her marketing degree to use. The problem? The business wasn't profitable yet, meaning her salary would take a major hit. And she didn't want that to affect the kids. She framed it like this was all for them. That she didn't want them to suffer because of her choices. That extra child support would bridge the gap while she transitioned into this new phase of her career. I listened. I really did. But something about it didn't sit right with me. She already got alimony. She already got child support. And it was a generous amount, nearly 25% of my income every single month. And let's not forget, our kids. They're only with her 2 days a week. Had it not been for her lawyer working some legal magic, she probably wouldn't have even gotten child support in the first place. But I didn't fight it. I paid because I wanted to help. Because she made less than me. Because I wanted to do the right thing. But now she wanted more. And I couldn't justify it. So, I told her, as calmly as I could, that increasing the payments wasn't an option. She was already receiving plenty. If she wanted to gamble on a new career, that was on her. She didn't take it well. Her face twisted with frustration. She called me selfish. Accused me of putting money over our kids' well-being. She insisted this was for them. That I needed to step up. The argument escalated. I reminded her, again, that she already had financial support. That she wasn't struggling. That our kids' needs were already covered. But she refused to see it that way. I brought up the fact that they were only with her on weekends. Just 2 days. If she couldn't manage even that, what did that say? That struck a nerve. She snapped, saying it was insulting. How dare I suggest she didn't care about our children? That I was making it about her, when in reality, she just wanted what was best for them. Round and round we went. Neither of us backing down. Until finally, we both realized we were getting nowhere. So we decided to put the conversation on hold. I stormed out, frustration boiling in my chest. The only reason I had agreed to the alimony and child support terms the first time was because her lawyer had put an enticing deal on the table, one that worked entirely in her favor. But I hadn't even fought it. Why? Because my parents had backed her up. They made me feel like I had no choice. She's the mother of your children, they had reminded me, their voices laced with guilt-tripping persuasion. You owe her, whether you like it or not. You make more than she does. This is the least you can do. And so, I had caved. Begrudgingly, I signed away my hard-earned money, not because I wanted to, but because I had been cornered into it. But this time, I wasn't telling my parents a thing. I knew how this would go. If I brought it up, they would just do it again, pressure me, manipulate me into giving her what she wanted. They had always been attached to Tara. Too attached. It had been obvious from the start. My parents had longed for a daughter, but instead, they got me. They treated me well enough, sure, but the moment I got married, something shifted. Their excitement was unsettling. They called Tara the daughter they never had, and though it was meant to be affectionate, it made my skin crawl. Given their history, it felt off. And when the divorce hit, they were more devastated than I was. While I was picking up the pieces of my life, they were picking up the phone, checking on her, supporting her, comforting her. They didn't even ask how I was doing. Even after the papers were signed, they kept in touch with her, as if nothing had changed. It infuriated me, but what could I do? They were old, and I was their only child. As much as I resented how they treated me, I couldn't just abandon them. I had a conscience. Unlike them, I actually cared. So, despite everything, I forced myself to visit them at least once a month. But now, I wasn't sure I could do that anymore. They were pushing me too far. And Tara? Something wasn't adding up. Even with the absurd amount of money I was already giving her, she still wanted more. Why? What was she hiding? I needed answers. So, I started digging. I combed through her social media, meticulously, obsessively. It wasn't hard. Tara had always kept a low profile, her follower count barely exceeding 150. Most of them were friends, family, and colleagues. But then, I found them. A handful of men. Strangers. There were around 10, all unfamiliar faces. I knew she had been dating again, word traveled fast, but one profile stood out like a flashing red warning sign. A kid. He couldn't have been older than 22, his profile littered with signs of trouble. Photos of him holding a joint, exhaling thick clouds of smoke in dimly lit rooms. The kind of aesthetic that screamed recklessness. The kind of guy who didn't care about consequences. Tara was never into that scene. At least, that's what I thought. She had 2 kids, for God's sake. What was she doing hanging around someone like this? I kept scrolling. It got worse. Tattoos covered his arms, his captions oozing arrogance. He bragged openly about drugs, flaunted his lifestyle like it was a badge of honor. And then, the image that made my stomach drop, him, gripping a rifle, posing like he was invincible. I knew exactly what kind of person I was looking at. And Tara had been commenting on his pictures. Heart emojis. Flirty remarks. I clenched my jaw. This wasn't just casual. Something was seriously wrong. I wasn't taking any chances. I sent the least incriminating picture to a friend of mine, someone with connections. His uncle was in law enforcement. If anyone could dig up dirt on this guy, it was him. Days passed. Then, the call came. My friend's uncle knew him. And not in a good way. 2 years ago, this guy had been arrested for aggravated assault and battery. He had beaten a dealer, slamming a fire extinguisher into the man's stomach. The only reason he wasn't serving a longer sentence? The victim had survived, and the system had let him walk free last year. My gut had been right all along. Tara was involved with a violent criminal. And my kids were around him. I had to know the truth. I showed my children a harmless picture of him, just his face. I kept my voice calm, my expression neutral. Do you know this guy? They hesitated. My heart pounded. It's okay, I reassured them. You won't get in trouble. Just tell me the truth. Their eyes darted to each other before they finally caved. They knew him. Very well. Their voices trembled as they admitted the unthinkable. This man wasn't just some random fling. He was Tara's new boyfriend. They had known him for 6 months. 6 months. My stomach twisted into knots. And then came the worst part. Tara had threatened them. She had warned them, explicitly, not to tell me about him. Ever. If they did, she would ruin them. Her threats were terrifyingly specific. She had told them she would show up at their school and get them expelled. She had said she would make sure they ended up in an orphanage. She had looked them in the eye and told them that if they snitched, she would never forgive them. And neither would I. She had poisoned their minds. Made them believe that even their own father would turn his back on them. They were terrified. And now, I was too. They were just kids. Innocent, trusting. They believed every word she told them. And because of that, they never said a thing to me. Their mother had played her role flawlessly, so convincingly that they never doubted her. I was horrified. The idea that she would manipulate our children like that made my stomach turn. But I had no idea that things were about to take an even darker turn. Then, my son dropped the bombshell. He told me that ever since she had started seeing him, they had been inseparable. He was always at the house. Always lurking. And he made sure to time it perfectly, waiting for me to be gone before showing up. They were living together, but whenever I arrived to drop off the kids, he would slip out, take a walk, vanish. A calculated move to keep me in the dark. My son went on, his voice trembling. He told me they would spend hours together, doing something. He didn't fully understand, but he remembered the smell, something strange, something thick in the air. Not like normal cigarettes. My heart clenched. I knew exactly what he meant. That was bad enough. But then, he hesitated before continuing, as if unsure whether he should say more. And then he did. They fought. A lot. He had overheard them yelling, screaming at each other behind closed doors. And then there were the whispers. The hushed voices. Talks about needles. Pills left scattered in the bathroom. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just reckless. This was dangerous. I forced myself to stay calm as I asked my son one last thing. Had he ever gone into his mother's room? Had he ever been near that bathroom? He shook his head. Thank God. But I knew. I knew exactly what was happening. And I knew what had to be done. I picked up the phone and called my lawyer. I didn't hesitate. Not even for a second. I want full custody of my children, I told him, my voice steady, resolute. Then, I told him everything my son had just told me. Every horrifying detail. He was just as shocked as I was. This wasn't just out of character for her, it was downright unthinkable. Irresponsible. Selfish. I didn't call her. I didn't warn her. I didn't even know what I would say if I did. The betrayal, the anger, the disgust, it was too much to process. She only found out when she was served the papers. And the moment she got them, my phone rang. She was furious. Yelling. Screaming. She thought I was coming after her just because I had found out about him. But I didn't let her get any further. I know everything, I said coldly. And I can't believe you would do this to our children. Silence. For a moment, she played dumb. Pretended she had no idea what I was talking about. But then I told her every single thing our son had confessed to me. The act crumbled. The lies fell apart. And then she started begging. She said she was in love with him. That she was trying to help him. That she just needed more money, not for herself, but for him. To send him to rehab. To fix him. To save him. I didn't care. I didn't care how they met. I didn't care that she knew about his past. I didn't care what sob story he fed her when they matched online. None of it mattered. The only thing that mattered to me was that she had endangered our children. She had let them live under the same roof as an addict. And to make things worse, he wasn't just an addict. He had just gotten out of jail. And she never thought to tell me. I told her there was nothing she could say to change my mind. I was done. Maybe we hadn't been good partners. Maybe our marriage had failed. But I had always believed she would at least be a good mother. That belief was gone now. I had willingly paid child support and alimony without a second thought because I had trusted her. But now, she had proven me so wrong. She had lost control of her life. And worse, she had put our children in danger. They were afraid of him. My son had told me how unpredictable he was. How he would lash out over nothing, explode in rage. He was unstable. And the kids had learned to avoid him. That was all I needed to hear. She begged me to stop the custody battle. Pleaded. But there was no turning back. I told her to prepare herself. To get a lawyer. Because I was coming for full custody, and I would not stop until my kids were safe. I thought she would finally understand. That she would see the gravity of what she had done. That she would realize why I had no choice but to do this. Instead, she ran to my parents. And, of course, they got involved. A couple of days later, they called me. Same old speech. Same old guilt trip. They told me I needed to answer her messages. That she was still the mother of my children. That I needed to show her some respect. I'd heard it all before. They had used the same words when I divorced her. The same pressure, the same arguments. That's why I had agreed to alimony, to support. But this time? No. This time, it was my children who were at stake. And I was not going to let anyone talk me out of doing what I had to do. I had already made up my mind. No second guessing. No doubts. My kids had spoken, their voices filled with fear, and that was all I needed to hear. They didn't want to go back to Tara's house, not as long as he was there. That was it for me. Nothing and no one could change my decision. But my parents? They wouldn't let it go. They kept pressing me, calling me selfish, saying I was trying to rip the kids away from their mother. They insisted I should be more understanding, that love was complicated, that in the long run, the children would need their mom. How does that even make sense? My own kids told me they were afraid. They didn't feel safe. Yet somehow, I was the one being unreasonable. They said I was heartless for filing for full custody. As if this was about Tara's love life. As if it mattered to me who she was with. It didn't. But the moment she brought someone dangerous around my children, it became my business. And I decided, no more. They wouldn't be near him again. Any responsible parent would do the same. Still, my parents refused to see it that way. They were convinced I was blowing things out of proportion, that I was being dramatic. I started doubting myself. Was I really making the right choice? They were so insistent, so convinced that I was overreacting. I know they have their own issues with Tara, but I didn't want to make a mistake that would hurt my kids in the long run. That's why I turned to others for clarity, for an objective opinion. Was I wrong to fight for full custody after learning my ex-wife was involved with someone dangerous? Update 1. The response I received was overwhelming. The support, the encouragement, it meant the world to me and my kids. They finally felt free. The weight they had been carrying, the fear, the secrets, it was all out in the open now. They didn't have to pretend anymore. They could just breathe. After reading through so many comments and suggestions, I made a decision. My children needed therapy. They had been through something painful, something that left scars, and it was my job to help them heal. The damage Tara caused wasn't just going to disappear overnight. Speaking of Tara, I blocked her. Every message she sent? Ignored. Deleted. I didn't need to hear whatever excuses or self-pity she had to offer. She could whine, cry, call me selfish all she wanted, it wouldn't change the truth. She was the selfish one. She should have put her children first. Instead, she chose him. She lied to me for months, and now I was just supposed to brush it off? Not a chance. And my parents? Blocked too. If they wanted to defend Tara so badly, they could go lean on her from now on. Whatever happened next? Not my problem. If they ever found themselves in trouble, they knew exactly who not to call. Update 2. Tara and I were set to meet with a mediator in a few days. But she couldn't wait. Today, she showed up at my house. Thankfully, the kids were at school. But I still didn't let her in. I didn't want to talk to her. Didn't want to see her. But that didn't stop her from trying. She stood outside, sobbing, pleading, begging me to let her see the kids. Even after I told her they weren't home, she refused to believe me. She was convinced I was hiding them, keeping them away from her. Minutes passed. She wouldn't leave. Wouldn't stop. I had enough. I told her, plain and simple, leave now, or I'm calling the cops. She already had enough problems. Did she really want to add a police incident to the list? That got to her. She left. But not before throwing one last desperate threat my way. You won't take my children from me. She had no idea how wrong she was. I didn't take them from her. She drove them away. She made them afraid. She ruined everything. And now? She had to face the consequences. I'm just grateful she was gone before the kids got home. Another confrontation like that? Not something I wanted them to witness. I told them they wouldn't be seeing Tara anymore. No more weekends at her place. No more calls with their grandparents either. They were fine with it. More than fine. And in therapy, they've been opening up in ways I never expected. We still have a long road ahead, but for the first time, I feel like we're moving in the right direction. Update 3. I know I've been silent for a while. But that's because I've been fighting in court. The mediation failed, no surprise there. We were never going to find common ground. So we took it to court. And let me tell you, we fought tooth and nail. Family courts usually try to keep both parents involved. But in this case, even the judge could see the disaster unfolding. Tara's behavior spoke for itself. She completely unraveled. Even her lawyer, the one who had given us a tough fight in the beginning, couldn't save her this time. She was erratic. Unstable. Even in the courtroom, she was a mess. I almost pitied her. Almost. But there was no room for sympathy here. Not when my children's well-being was on the line. And in the end, we won. Full custody. No shared weekends. No visitation rights. Nothing. My kids and I, we're free. We're happy. And Tara? I have no idea. And honestly, I don't care.